Silent Hill didn't just redefine horror in video games, it changed the entire entertainment industry's approach to the genre. Yet, despite its critical success, the series was a commercial failure, with none of its installments achieving impressive sales. And over time, Konami's constant experimentation with the franchise only diluted its legacy. However, the remake of Silent Hill 2 promises to bring the franchise back to its former glory, with the entire industry eagerly anticipating the legend's return. But can it manage to live up to its grandiose expectations? Hello, Kings! I am the Games Guru, and this is the story of Silent Hill's tragic failure. Silent Hill began in the late 1990s, driven by the vision of Keiichiro Toyama, a game designer at Konami. Toyama wanted to create a game that delved deep into human psychology rather than relying on gore and violence as most of the horrors of the time. He was inspired by Stephen King's novels and the surreal films of David Lynch. His goal was simple yet thrilling: to create a horror game that didn't rely on traditional jump scares, but on emotional tension and the fear of the unknown. Konami saw potential in this idea, particularly in contrast to Capcom's Resident Evil series, which was dominating the survival horror market with its action-heavy approach. Silent Hill was envisioned as something different, slower, more terrifying, and emotionally complex. To bring this haunting world to life, Konami formed Team Silent, a small group of developers, many of whom were relatively inexperienced. Toyama took the lead as director, with Akira Yamaoka heading sound design, which would become a key pillar of the game's terrifying impact. The team drew inspiration from films like Jacob's Ladder and the literary works of Howard Lovecraft. Their focus was to create fear through mood, tone, and a sense of dread rather than constant action. However, the technical limitations of the original PlayStation posed a significant challenge. To mask the console's inability to render far distances, the team implemented thick fog throughout the town of Silent Hill. What began as a solution to a technical problem quickly became one of the game's most iconic elements. This dense, eerie fog heightened the tension, leaving players uncertain about what horrors lurked just beyond their vision. It also amplified the town's sense of isolation, making players feel trapped in a nightmare they couldn't fully understand. The sound design, led by Yamaoka, played an equally critical role in immersing players into terror. Yamaoka's use of industrial sounds, chilling ambience, and haunting music added layers of dread to every corner of Silent Hill. He wanted players to feel uncomfortable and on edge, even when nothing seemed to be happening on screen. The soundtrack became a defining element of the game, setting the standard for sound design in horror games moving forward. The story of Silent Hill revolves around Harry Mason, a father searching for his missing daughter in a mysterious and nightmarish town. The town itself is more than just a setting, it's a dark, twisted entity that reflects the psychological traumas of its inhabitants. The game's narrative was fragmented, forcing players to piece together its disturbing mysteries as they navigated through eerie environments. Silent Hill's story wasn't just told, it was experienced, making players confront the town's horrors and their meanings. By the way, the Silent Hill itself was based on a real coal mining town in Pennsylvania, which suffers from underground fires since 1965. You can learn more about it in my shorts video. Released in February 1999, Silent Hill didn't have the massive marketing push that other Sony's games did, but it quickly caught the attention of players and critics alike. It launched around the same time with its direct competitor Resident Evil 2, which dominated in terms of action and pacing. However, Silent Hill stood out by creating a deeply psychological and emotional horror experience. It was slower, more atmospheric, and dreadful. Though it didn't match Resident Evil in initial sales, Silent Hill gained a strong following through word of mouth and critical praise, eventually selling over 2 million copies. Critics praised Silent Hill for its groundbreaking game design decisions, haunting soundtrack, and emotional depth. While some found the controls clunky, the overall experience was terrifying and unforgettable. Silent Hill didn't just leave its mark on Konami and Sony, it reshaped the entire horror genre in gaming. Its influence can be seen in many modern games like Alan Wake and The Evil Within, which adopted its emphasis on mood and psychological tension. The game's impact also extended beyond gaming. Interestingly, the 2019 remake of Jacob's Ladder borrowed back elements from Silent Hill, completing a unique cycle of influence. With the first game's success and growing fanbase, Konami quickly greenlit the sequel. Despite being involved in other projects at the time, they made Silent Hill 2 their top priority. Konami recognized that the franchise had the potential to become one of their flagship series, and with the upcoming launch of the PlayStation 2, the timing couldn't have been better. Team Silent saw some shifts after the release of the first game, though the core of the team remained intact. Keiichiro Toyama, the original game's director, moved on to work on other projects, with Masashi Tsuboyama stepping in as the new director. Akira Yamaoka stayed on board as the lead composer, ensuring that the eerie soundscape of the original game would carry through to the sequel. From a business standpoint, Konami wanted Silent Hill 2 to not only please existing fans, but also to reach a broader audience to outperform the first game's sales. This time, the story centered around James Sunderland, a man tormented by guilt and grief after receiving a letter from his dead wife, calling him to Silent Hill. Gameplay-wise, the team refined combat mechanics while deliberately keeping them clunky to evoke helplessness. They also added branching storylines and multiple endings based on player actions, significantly enhancing the game's replayability. These changes weren't just driven by creativity, they also reflected feedback from players who wanted more control over the narrative. When Silent Hill 2 was released in September 2001, it faced stiff competition from action-heavy titles like Devil May Cry and Metal Gear Solid 2. Though it didn't dominate sales charts, it was a massive critical success, with many considering it one of the greatest horror games to this day. Reviewers praised its emotionally charged story, eerie atmosphere, and the disturbing sound design that enhanced the game's unsettling nature. However, sales only reached just over 1 million copies, a solid but underwhelming figure given the game's critical acclaim. But if you somehow missed this iconic classic, now's your chance to grab its fresh remake on PS5 and Steam. And if the official price is a little too steep, check my link in the description for a great deal. While Silent Hill 2 didn't achieve the blockbuster sales Konami had hoped for, its critical success and cultural impact were undeniable. However, the modest sales figures prompted Konami to rethink their approach. As the franchise moved forward into Silent Hill 3, there was a clear shift in strategy. Konami needed to make the game more commercially appealing without sacrificing the depth and psychological terror that had made the series so iconic. To achieve this, Konami returned to the storyline of the original game, choosing Heather Mason, the daughter of the original protagonist, as the main character. Keiichiro Toyama also returned to direct Silent Hill 3, while Akira Yamaoka continued to deliver the haunting soundtrack. The development team sought to refine the balance between psychological terror and more traditional horror elements, responding to feedback from players of Silent Hill 2. They enhanced the action and combat aspects of the game, introducing more intense monster encounters while still keeping the eerie atmosphere at the forefront. Released in May 2003, Silent Hill 3 had a stronger marketing push than its predecessor. Critics praised the game for its disturbing atmosphere, grotesque creature design, and haunting audio. For fans of the original Silent Hill, the return to its storyline and increased action focus was a welcome change, even though some preferred the slower, more cerebral horror of the previous game. Commercially, Silent Hill 3 performed better than its predecessor, selling about 1.5 million copies and establishing itself as a solid entry in the series. While not a groundbreaking hit, the game solidified Silent Hill's standing in the horror genre. Its mix of psychological terror and visceral horror would continue to influence horror gaming in the years to come, leaving an indelible mark on the genre. Despite modest sales, Konami refused to give up on the series and decided to give it another shot, greenlighting the sequel. By the time Silent Hill 4: The Room entered development, Team Silent was undergoing changes. Several key members, including the previous director, were no longer involved, leaving the creative direction to a new team led by Suguru Murakoshi. Konami sought to differentiate this installment from its predecessors, aiming to refresh the series while maintaining its core identity. The new direction was clear from the start. Silent Hill 4 focused less on the titular town and more on the concept of isolation and entrapment. The story followed Henry Townshend trapped inside his apartment, with the player navigating both his confined room and an alternate dimension filled with horrors. This break from the traditional Silent Hill setting and structure was an ambitious move by Konami, but it divided fans. Some praised the claustrophobic, tense atmosphere, while others missed the familiar streets of Silent Hill. Despite mixed reactions, Silent Hill 4 sold over 1 million copies. It maintained the franchise's eerie tone, but marked the end of the era for Team Silent. Konami, dissatisfied with the commercial results, decided to take the franchise in new directions with American developers, leaving Silent Hill 4 as the last title fully developed by the original team. This marked a significant transition for the series, which would soon face new challenges as it ventured into unfamiliar territory. In the mid-2000s, Konami saw an opportunity in the rapid rise of mobile gaming and decided to expand some of their IPs, including Silent Hill, to reach a wider mobile audience. Titles like Silent Hill Orphan, The Escape, The Arcade, and Origins were part of this experiment. These games were developed by various European and American developers. Unlike the core titles, these spin-offs were designed to be bite-sized experiences, utilizing limited hardware capabilities while attempting to retain the essence of Silent Hill's psychological horror. However, translating that unsettling atmosphere to mobile platforms proved difficult. Despite Konami's push, these mobile titles didn't capture the magic of the main series. Critical reception was generally lukewarm, with players finding the games lacking the depth and fear that the console versions offered. They were seen more as curiosities rather than essential parts of the Silent Hill experience. As sales figures remained unimpressive and public interest waned, Konami ultimately ceased focusing on mobile Silent Hill titles, returning to the console market for their core audience. Konami sought to revitalize the series by outsourcing development to American studios, hoping to attract a broader audience. Each of the following titles was developed by different teams, reflecting Konami's experimentation with external partnerships. However, these efforts largely fell short, leading to a string of critical and commercial disappointments. The 2008 Silent Hill Homecoming, developed by Double Helix Games, was an attempt to shift the franchise towards a more action-oriented direction, focusing heavily on combat. The motivation behind this was to appeal to Western audiences, who favored more dynamic gameplay. However, this shift alienated longtime fans, who were drawn to the series' psychological roots. Critics cited uneven storytelling and uninspired gameplay, leading to poor reception. Sales were underwhelming, and the franchise's identity began to feel diluted. The 2009 Silent Hill Shattered Memories, developed by Climax Studios, was a reimagining of the original Silent Hill. It focused more on psychological horror and had a unique mechanic that adapted the game's story based on the player's choices. Despite some praise for its innovation, it failed to reignite the franchise's former glory, with fans and critics divided over the departure from traditional gameplay elements. Sales were moderate, but it wasn't enough to return the franchise to its peak. The 2012 Silent Hill Downpour, developed by Vatra Games, attempted to return to the series' psychological horror roots while introducing an open-world element. Unfortunately, technical issues and a lack of cohesive narrative depth led to a lukewarm reception. Critics noted that it lacked the eerie tension and atmospheric dread that defined the earlier games. Next, Silent Hill, Book of Memories, developed by WayForward Technologies, was an odd departure for the franchise, taking the form of a dungeon-crawling RPG for the PlayStation Vita. This drastic change in genre confused fans, and the game was met with poor reviews. Its release further damaged the reputation of the Silent Hill name, signaling the franchise's continued struggle to find its footing under Western development. The collective failure of these titles not only hurt the Silent Hill franchise, but also Konami's broader reputation in the gaming industry. The shift to Western developers, while an understandable attempt to cater to a different audience, resulted in a series of flops that left both fans and critics disappointed. Konami's inability to recapture the magic of the original games left the future of Silent Hill uncertain, leading the franchise to fade into obscurity for a time. However, this downturn would soon pave the way for a much-anticipated revival in the hands of a visionary new director. In 2014, Hideo Kojima, famed for his work on the Metal Gear series, unexpectedly took on a new challenge, reviving the Silent Hill franchise. Konami had been struggling to bring Silent Hill back to its former glory, so the decision to involve Kojima, along with renowned director Guillermo del Toro, was seen as a foolproof move. The development team, spearheaded by Kojima Productions, wanted to craft a psychological horror experience that would push boundaries, creating an immersive, terrifying atmosphere unlike anything players had seen before. With Del Toro's cinematic vision and Kojima's storytelling expertise, they aimed to reinvigorate Silent Hill with a modern, narrative-driven approach. In August 2014, PT was released as a free demo on PlayStation 4, without any initial indication that it was tied to Silent Hill. The demo freaked players out with its minimalistic design, disturbing atmosphere, and the eerie looped hallway mechanic. The reveal at the end, showing that PT was a teaser for Silent Hill, shocked fans and sent the gaming community into a frenzy. The buzz surrounding the demo was overwhelming, solidifying PT as one of the most terrifying experiences in gaming. However, Kojima's relationship with Konami had soured, and he left the company in 2015 after more than 2 decades of service. Despite the enormous potential and excitement surrounding the project, Konami chose not to continue development. Fans were devastated by the cancellation, and the gaming industry widely criticized Konami's decision, seeing it as a massive lost opportunity. After the cancellation, PT was removed from the PlayStation Store, making the consoles with the demo pre-installed a valuable collectible, with some selling for significant sums on eBay. The world's reaction to PT was one of fascination and frustration, as the demo had redefined expectations for horror games. Its cancellation rippled through both the Silent Hill franchise and the gaming industry at large, dealing massive damage to Konami's reputation and leaving fans longing for what could have been. In 2022, after 8 years of silence following PT's cancellation and over a decade since the last mainline entry, Konami announced a remake of Silent Hill 2, sending shockwaves through the gaming community. This remake, developed by Bloober Team, renowned for their psychological horror game The Medium, marks a significant return for the franchise. While none of the original team's silent members are directly involved, Akira Yamaoka is returning to compose the haunting soundtrack, and artist Masahiro Ito is overseeing monster designs. The decision to remake Silent Hill 2 comes after repeated fan demand and the enduring legacy of the original game. Scheduled to release on October 8th, Silent Hill 2 promises to be the scariest video game of the last couple of years, which is why I already pre-ordered the game. And if you are too craving for a quality horror experience, click my affiliate link in the description for a huge discount. Thank you all for tuning in. I am the Games Guru, love to all, and I see you in the next video. Bye bye.